Right now, if you are anything like most people a couple of hours before bed, your hands and feet are quietly getting warmer, and you have no idea you are doing it. It is not comfort. It is not the room. It is the first move in a shutdown sequence that has to happen before sleep can start at all. You feel it as something vague, maybe a loosening in your chest, maybe your eyelids growing heavy, maybe just a general sense that effort has become optional. What you are not feeling, because there is no nerve ending built to report it directly to your conscious mind, is the actual physical event in the temperature of your internal organs, engineered by your own nervous system, starting long before you decide you are ready for bed. Here is the part that sounds backwards the first time you hear it. To cool down on the inside, your body first has to warm up on the outside. That is not a contradiction, and it is not a coincidence. It is the entire mechanism, and it has been measured closely enough that researchers can now predict, with real accuracy, how quickly a given person is about to fall asleep, just by watching. Start with the number that is actually changing. Your core temperature spends most of the day hovering close to 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius, the number most people learned in school as simply normal. But it is not fixed. Over the course of a single night, it fluctuates by roughly 2 degrees Fahrenheit, and that drop is not some side effect of lying still in the dark. Researchers who study the relationship between temperature and sleep describe the decline as beginning reliably about 2 hours before you actually fall asleep. And here is the detail that matters most. The moment people actually drift off does not line up with the coldest point of that curve. It lines up with the steepest part of the drop. Your body is not waiting to hit some fixed low number, the way a thermostat waits to click a furnace off. It is watching the rate of change, and the faster the temperature is falling, the more likely sleep is to arrive in that exact window. Researchers tracked all of this the unglamorous way, with small temperature sensors taped to fingertips, toes, and the torso, recording through the night. So why would the timing of sleep depend on a temperature slope instead of, say, a clock or how tired you feel? Because those are not actually separate systems taking turns. A region deep in the brain called the preoptic hypothalamus sits at the center of both jobs at once. It is described as a key site for starting non-REM sleep, and in the same breath, as an integrator of thermoregulatory information, meaning it is the same tissue handling both the too cold signal and the too warm signal your body sends all day. Feeding into that region is the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master circadian clock, tracking time of day on its own separate schedule regardless of how sleepy you feel in the moment. Sleep pressure, time of day, and body temperature are not three inputs arriving at three separate decisions. They are wired into one shared evaluation, running in the same small patch of hypothalamus. This is not just a correlation researchers noticed by accident. In laboratory work on that same region, when researchers reactivated a specific population of neurons in the preoptic warmth, the result was not sleep alone, and not cooling alone. It was both at once. Reactivating those neurons produced simultaneous non-REM sleep and a drop in body temperature, in the same instant, from the same trigger. That is about as close as biology gets to proof that these two processes are not just next-door neighbors. They share a doorbell. Now, how does a body actually pull heat out of its own core on command, hours before it is unconscious to do anything else about it? Not through the chest, and not through the scalp, the places people usually picture heat escaping from. It does it through the hands and feet. In the roughly 2 hours before that first sleep episode, while a person is still fully awake, blood vessels in the skin of the hands and feet begin to open. That widening lets more blood, carrying more heat, move out toward the surface, where it can radiate into the surrounding air. For those 2 hours, your fingers and toes are functioning as the body's radiator vents, deliberately open so the core has somewhere for its heat to go. A study published in the journal Nature in 1999, led by the researcher Kurt Crouchy, actually measured how much this matters compared to everything else researchers might watch for. Out of all the physiological signals in that study, the degree of blood vessel dilation in the skin of the hands and feet, essentially how wide open those vessels had become, turned out to be the single best physiological predictor of how quickly a person would actually fall asleep. The openness of the blood vessels in the extremities. This is very likely the real explanation behind something a lot of people have noticed for years without ever having a name for it: the specific urge to stick one foot out from under the blanket right as you are drifting off, or the particular restlessness of trying to fall asleep in a bedroom that is just slightly too warm. If the hands and feet cannot release heat, because they are trapped under thick blankets or because the room itself is too warm for any temperature difference to exist between skin and air, the core has nowhere to send its heat. The whole cooling operation stalls, and the signal telling the brain it is time to let go gets weaker exactly when it is needed most. It is easy to assume the body just runs out of energy at night and idles until morning. The data says otherwise. Every part of this, the timing, the vessels, the neurons in the hypothalamus, points to something closer to a scheduled operation than a passive collapse, carried out with a level of precision most people never notice happening inside their own skin. Here is the part of this story that sounds like it should break the whole idea. A warm bath before bed. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine followed 1,094 older adults, average age 72, and tracked what happened on nights when they took a hot bath before bed. People who bathed somewhere between about 1 and 2 hours before bedtime, and people who bathed between about 2 and 3 hours before bedtime, both showed a measurably higher gap between their skin temperature at the extremities and their core, the exact same hands and feet versus core measurement from the Crouchy research, along with a shorter stretch of time needed to actually fall asleep. In plain terms, that gap in skin temperature widened by roughly half a degree Celsius in each of those bathing windows, and the actual both patterns showing up clearly across more than 1,000 people, measured about 30 minutes before they went to bed. A hot bath sounds like it should work against the cooling system. It does not. The heat at the skin surface triggers the body's own vasodilation reflex as it tries to get rid of that heat afterward, and that reflex is the same one that was already scheduled to happen on its own that night. The bath does not fight the mechanism. It borrows it, and gives it an earlier, stronger push. None of this runs independently. The hormone most people associate loosely with the phrase "the one that makes you sleepy" rises on very nearly the same overnight schedule as this temperature decline. Researchers studying the ordinary pattern of an undisturbed night found that rising melatonin coincides with the falling core temperature that comes before sleep onset. The two rhythms move together, night after night, whether or not anyone is paying attention to either one of them. The temperature dance does not stop once sleep actually begins either. Researchers tracking body temperature continue, whether into REM sleep or into brief waking, come with a small rewarming, and then the next non-REM stretch cools things down again. The whole night runs as a slow, repeating rhythm of cooling and rewarming, not one drop and then silence. Put the entire sequence in order, and it looks like this. The suprachiasmatic nucleus keeps time regardless of how tired a person feels. As evening arrives, melatonin begins rising. In the 2 hours before sleep actually starts, blood vessels and core temperature slides down by something in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. The moment that decline is falling the fastest, not the moment it bottoms out, is the moment the brain is most willing to let a person go. It is worth being direct about what this is not. This is not a claim that a colder bedroom cures insomnia, or that anyone lying awake night after night simply owns the wrong blanket. Ongoing difficulty falling or staying asleep can have a long list of causes, some of them medical, and nothing here is meant to diagnose or treat any of them. If sleep has been a genuine, repeated struggle, a doctor or a sleep specialist is a far better resource than a video, because they can actually investigate what a general mechanism like this one cannot rule in or out. But for the ordinary, nightly version of this, the version nearly everyone lives through without ever naming it, the mechanism really is this specific, and this well documented. The body is not shutting down at night. It is running a quiet, outward-facing cooling operation, using its own hands and feet as the exhaust, on a schedule set 2 hours before anyone ever notices feeling tired. This channel exists for exactly this kind of question, the ordinary body doing something extraordinary without asking permission first. So here is a real question for the comments. Have you ever caught a foot sneaking out from under your own blanket right as you were falling asleep, without ever deciding to do it? Tell us when it happens for you, and how warm your room usually is. Next time, we go in almost the opposite direction. We look at what your body actually does, mechanism by mechanism. Subscribe so you do not miss it.